Hello, Calgary Catholic teachers, and welcome to the Words Their Way how-to video. My name is Kimberly Goosen, and I am the new curriculum consultant with a specialization in ELAL. You should be receiving your boxes soon with your resource for Words Their Way, so I'm hoping this video will help you along the way. Let's get started. Words Their Way is a research-based program, and really for teachers, it is a diagnostic tool to help you understand students' spelling patterns, how they use, misuse, and what kind of patterns they need to learn. It's differentiated. Every student will be targeted at the skills that they need to develop. It's hands-on, it's multi-sensory, and really is based on inquiry as students grow their understanding of how spelling works through the word sort activities. For more information, please turn to your teacher manual, Chapter 1, Developmental Word Knowledge on page 2. Words Their Way is based on the 5 orthographic development stages. So the first one being emergent, which is in your teacher manual, page 86. Letter name alphabetic, which is in your teacher manual, page 146. Within word pattern, in your teacher manual, page 206. Syllables and affixes, in your teacher manual, page 256. And derivational relations, in your teacher manual, page 294. Please note that number 2, number 3, and number 4 are the book sorts that we have purchased. The other ones are available for purchase, but we thought for grade 3, these were the best book sorts for you. Please recognize that these are developmental stages and are not based on grade level. So your box has arrived. Now what do you do? First, so you will know inside your box, there is your Words Their Way manual, teacher manual, and then you have your book sorts. So there's your letter name, alphabetical speller within word pattern, and your syllables and affixes spellers. First thing you're going to do is you're going to take that book to your LCL librarian who will catalog each book sort and the teacher manual before assigning it out to one of the grade 3 teachers at your school. Now, there is only one set of Words Their Way book sorts and teacher manuals, so please be mindful and share with any of your colleagues in your building. This is an amazing program, and once you get started, hopefully everybody will want to join in. Words Their Way cycle I'm going to take you through is kind of a 5-step process. So our first step that we're really going to deep dive into is your spelling inventory. So this is where your students are actually going to complete a spelling test so that you have a greater grasp of an idea of where they are missing their gaps in their spelling understanding. So you can turn to page 380 of your teacher manual and you will find the elementary spelling inventory. You are then going to administer the spelling test to all of your students using a blank spelling template for 25 words. Ideally, you would love to do this one-on-one so that you can really see how they're spelling those words. But of course, I understand you will probably be doing this as a whole group, and that is absolutely fine. So as you can see, here are your 25 words, and much like Chanel, you will say the word, say it in a sentence, and say the word again. And then here is a little blank template that you would be putting their words on. Now we move on to the next step. This is where you're actually going to mark them, all those spelling inventories. So on page 381 of your teacher manual, it's called Words Their Way Elementary Spelling Inventory Feature Guide. So you are going to go and look at your students' individual spelling test, and then you are going to highlight on that feature guide all the features that they get correct for each word. Then you are also going to mark if they spell the word correctly or incorrectly. Once they are completed, then you will add up all the feature points on the bottom of the page and the word spelled correctly on the right-hand column. You then total these two numbers together to get your total score out of 87. So let's take a look at an example. So here is your spelling inventory feature guide. Here are all your feature points on the bottom. Here is where you would put all the words if it was spelled correctly or not. So you notice there are 25 words and 62 feature points. So for example, if the student spelled bed correctly, then you would highlight B, D, and E. You would continue going along. Here you can see there's 2 columns to get that 7 feature points. This column has 5, et cetera, et cetera. Here's an example of a student. So here you can see this student spelled all these words correctly until they got to shopping. Okay, so they still got points right, feature points, but they didn't spell the word correctly. Okay, so then here you can see there's our tally of how many words were spelled correctly and how many feature points they had. They will then add up these two to get their total out of 87. So even if a student doesn't get the word correct, they can still get feature points. And this is why I really stress having that one-on-one time for them to spell, because we want them to spell the words on their own because they can still get portions right? Again, we're looking at those spelling patterns and how they are doing with those. So now I've completed my spelling inventory feature guide for my one individual student. I will continue this for all of my students. Now we're on to the next stage. We need to identify that student's spelling stage. So you're going to follow along the bottom of the feature points. Once a student has made 2 or more errors in that section, you need to stop. You're going to move up the column to see what spelling stage they are. Now, don't forget to check if they are early, middle, or late in that particular spelling stage. For more information about how to mark these, please turn to your teacher manual, Chapter 2, Getting Started, the Assessment of Orthographic Development on page 24. Let's take a look at an example here. So here's my student. They got 7 out of 7 on their feature. Gonna keep going. 5 out of 5, 5 out of 6. Oh, 1 error, I can continue to go on. 7 out of 7, 5 out of 5, 4 out of 7. Those are 3 errors. So I'm going to move up the column, and here is their spelling stage within word pattern, and they are in the middle stages. So I can write their spelling stage there. You can put the middle in there as well. So now I will do that for all of my students to identify what spelling stage they are currently at. Now the next step. On page 382, using the Words Their Way Elementary Spelling Inventory Classroom Composite, you are going to be inputting all of the data from your students. Line 1, you're going to begin with the student had the lowest score. So that score out of 87. And then you will continue in an ascending manner. So from your lowest score to your highest score. Once you have input all of their data, you're going to again highlight any section where a student had 2 or more feature errors. This highlighting is going to help with the next step. So let's take a look at an example. So here I have my lowest score, so 9 out of 87, and it goes all the way down to a student who got 81 out of 87. I inputted all of their feature points for every single area all the way across. Then I took my highlighter, and anytime they had 2 or more errors, I would highlight that section. As you can see, it is going in a typical manner where you're starting off with more errors and then slowly going this way in a diagonal way. This is going to help with your grouping. You may notice some of these gaps. These are great information for teachers to see, oh, there's some problems with syllable junctures. And these are my kiddos who are doing well. And then in this group, though, they're not so well. So if I group them, this might be something I need to really notice, which leads to my next step. We've completed all of our spelling inventories for every student. We've identified their spelling stage. We've created a classroom composite. Now we're going to look at those spelling inventories and begin to group our students based on their spelling stage. Let's take a look at an example. So when you're grouping, these are some things to remember. When they start with 2 errors or more, that's when you're going to go up to the column, right? That's their spelling stage. We want to group students with the similar spelling stages. 8 students in one group is going to be way too many. Goes much like Daily 5. When you are creating your groups, I think a total of 5 to 6 groups is best. It goes nicely with our 6-day cycle. If you have any kids that could be in the next group, but it really doesn't work, and you want to pull them back, a step backwards is a step forward. They're just going to reinforce their skills. So don't worry about those border kids and bringing them back. Always bring them back. It's a great thing for them. If you notice any gaps, just like I was showing you in the last couple of slides, where they aren't quite getting some skills and it's kind of not perfectly aligned, you can fill those in as a teacher. If you have any outliers, those high flyers are those ones that are really struggling. Maybe you have some EA time where they can work on it with an EA, or you can target them during another time. Remember, you can always change up your groups if you find something isn't working. When I first started this in the classroom and I did my first round, I quickly recognized that I needed to change up some of my groups because it just wasn't working. And that's okay. That's part of the process. So let's take a look at how I grouped my students. So I looked at our spelling stages. So 2 or more errors were going up, right? So these kiddos are in our letter name alphabetical. Now I decided to go with these 4. You will notice these are basically both in the middle of the letter name. So they fit in quite nicely. Then in my group B, most of them are within word pattern and they are middle. You will notice I have a large chunk of students who are in this grouping. So I group them pretty evenly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in there, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in there. If you have some kiddos who work well together or kiddos who you need to keep apart, this is a good way to just group them together or apart in this case. Okay, and so you continue doing that, making sure, right, no more than 8 students, and I wanted about 5 to 6 groups. So here are my 5 groups, A, B, C, D, E. Okay, and again, these are flexible. If you go through your words their way cycle and it doesn't work, that's okay. You can always change it up. So we've completed step 1 and 2. We've done our spelling inventory. We've grouped our students. Now let's plan for instruction. This is where we're going to be going to our book sorts. So that red, green, and yellow book sorts to be able to find the sorts that we need for our students and begin to plan our timing and instruction. So you are going to select the pacing and sequencing guides for the spelling stages of your group. So that letter name alphabetical, within word pattern, and syllables and affixes spellers. You can find the pacing and sequencing guides on the ELA EPD website under resources for instructions. I will be sharing these slides, so you'll be able to just click the link off here if you need to. This is what a pacing guide would look like. So this is for the letter name alphabetical spellers. So you can see on the top, it tells you what your spelling stage is. On the very top here, this is your pace, introductory, moderate, and advanced pace in terms of your word sorts. Then again, remember our spelling stages, whether they're early, middle, or late. And then in here are all of your word sorts that you would do from your word sort book sorts. Once you have completed that, now we're going to choose the appropriate word sorts for our students based on those pacing guides. So when you are picking your word sorts, you really want to start at your moderate pace. The introductory pace is going to go a little too slow and the advanced is going to go too fast. So start here. If you have some students who are really struggling and you have a group maybe that's a little bit lower, you might want to try the introductory, but for most students, the moderate pace works perfectly. Remember, you're looking at whether they were in that early stage, the middle stage, or the late stage. Okay, so for example, for this one, if I had a group that was letter name, alphabetical spelling stage, and they were middle, then I would go to this book sort first. Okay, so now we've completed step 1. We've done all our spelling inventories. Step 2, we've grouped our students. Step 3, we looked at our sequencing guides to be able to find our word sorts for all of our groups. Now we are going to start our cycle of Words Their Way. So when we are starting Words Their Way, it's really that gradual release model. So you're starting together with the teacher, lots and lots of support, and gradually that student is going to be doing things on their own. It follows a 6-day cycle, which is why I liked that groups of 5 to 6, because it works well with this. And we are going to go through a little deeper dive of what exactly we're doing on each day. For more information on how to work our Words Their Way cycle, in the teacher manual on chapter 3, entitled Word Study Principles and Practices, page 50, you'll find some more information. When you're starting, I do like, and again, this is on your EPD ELA website, there is a recording sheet. This is the front of the page, so they would put their name, they could put the sort number they're working on, and their group. When my students, when I group them, I like to let them pick the name of their group. I don't like to have group 1, 2, 3, or whatever it might be. So giving them a little bit of ownership over that group, and they get to come up with a name. Each of these correlate with the day of the Words Their Way cycle, and they can date it if they want to. You can also edit this so that you have your teacher name in there. So that's the front of the sorts. So day 1, you are going to give the word sorts to the kiddos. So they're going to actually cut out those word sorts. They are going to highlight that top header, which is their spelling pattern, and you will notice that is bold. So the bold word sorts, those are the ones that are going to highlight, and then put it into a bag. I like to have a little Ziploc bag, and I also get them to initial the back of their word sorts because you know you're going to find them on your floors. So it's a great way to know who lost what word sorts. So get them to write their name on the back. They will put that in, and then when you have a chance, you would read those words with the kiddos and make sure that they understand those words. So that's day 1. Day 2 is the teacher lesson. So I always had an area where you would meet the students, whether it's a carpet area or you have a table. And the students would come with their word sorts, and they would come and have the lesson with you. The lesson is in the word sorts book. So there's a lesson, and then they have the word sorts there for you to photocopy. So you can just go through that lesson. It's really directed. I like to have a little cart. I would have my whiteboards and my whiteboard markers all ready so that the students don't have to bring anything but their word sorts. This is where you would go through and sort those words. And again, you can go strictly right through the teacher lesson. It's very directed for you. Day 3 is the buddy sort. So they are then going to go and find a partner from their group and find a good fit spot. I like to incorporate that daily 5 language. In their little buddy group, they're going to hear the word, say the word, and spell the word with their partner one at a time. They will put the header pieces up on the top and then take a word, say it to their partner, hear it, and then put it down under the correct category. They will take turns back and forth. As they are doing that and saying the word, they're going to actually write the word on their buddy sort page. So it looks like this. So they would put their headers up here, and then they would actually write the words in the boxes below. Going one by one, but both students are writing on their own buddy sorting page. So they're both doing that writing process with their word sorts. Now, day 4 is the blind sort. So kind of like the memory game where you put all your cards upside down and you slowly take the words and reveal them. You're going to do the same with the blind sort. So you'll reveal the word and you will put it underneath the proper word sort heading, your spelling pattern. Okay, so taking turns going back and forth. There's no writing in this process. It's just lifting up the word sorts and putting them under the correct category. Now, day 5 is that independent. So remember, we talked about that gradual release. Started with the teacher, then they did it with a buddy. Now they're doing it independently. So they are going to sort the words independently and glue them on their recording page. So they'll glue them under each heading. So this is what the independent sorting page looks like. Again, they would put their headers up here. Now we're gluing them actually down and then gluing all the words that go with that pattern. Day 6 is a final day of Words Their Way, and that's an assessment check-in. So again, they're going to meet the teacher at that designated meeting spot and complete this check-in. Now, this check-in is 10 words that come from the Words Their Way lesson at the very end. They're a little bit tiny, so make sure you don't miss it, but it's on the very end of that lesson for that word sort. Again, these are words now that they have not seen yet. They haven't been working with them all week, but they use the same spelling patterns. So we're really looking for the students to see what transfer of learning do they really understand that spelling pattern. So they will do that spelling test, the 10 words, hand in their recording sheets to the teacher. You will be marking them and looking at least 8 out of 10 on those check-ins. And that's really saying and solidifying that they understand that spelling pattern. You might notice that they might not have that spelling pattern, and that's something that you need to go back with them and reinforce. So maybe we do another week of that sort. If there are some students who are not understanding, then again, you might have to take them and do a little more extra work. This is flexible. Some of the groups, maybe there's some that are really understanding it, and maybe you need to progress them further. So remember, it's always flexible groupings. Change it up to best meet your students' needs. This is what the check-in would be, right? That 10. And again, remember, we want at least 8 out of 10 on that. If they get 7 out of 10, I always say you can pass them along. That's okay. It's teacher's discretion. Now, when I was talking about the Words Their Way activities, there with the blind sort, the buddy sort, and the independent sort, there are certain things that you want to keep the same. So when they're doing the buddy sort, you want them to be writing the words. When they're doing the independent sort, you want them to be able to glue them down. It's part of the process of Words Their Way and helping them to understand those spelling patterns. But there are also other games and activities that they can be doing with those word sorts during that time, as long as they end with that piece. So in the teacher manual, under each spelling stage, there are also other suggested games and activities you can do. Here's a picture of one of them, a Jeopardy game that you could play with them during either one of those buddy sort times, independent sort, or blind sort. As well, in the teacher manual, starting on page 501, there are some games and templates for sorts. So lots of different activities to keep it exciting and engaging for your students. Now, the thing I want everyone to remember is when you're starting your groups, you want to start with a whole group rotation. So I usually like to pick an easier word sort, and everybody does it. So everybody's on day 1, everybody's on day 2, everybody's on day 3, and we go through the cycle over and over and over, modeling to the students the expectations and routines, right? What do I expect my students to be doing? And also those routines, so that by the end of however long you need to do this, and I would say at least a month, once you have completed that month, they know what day 1 is. They know what day 2. They know all of those days of the Words Their Way cycle. I also recommend creating some visuals for the students to see those expectations. So you saw those teacher versus student charts. Recreate them in the classroom together so that they feel an ownership over what they are doing. And of course, bring meaning to those spelling patterns that are being learned by all of those groups by incorporating them in your literacy blocks, either through shared reading, cusp review, whatever you might be doing, so that they can see those spelling patterns come alive throughout the day. When you are setting it up, there is going to be a bit of a staggered entry. So you will notice on day 1, on a Monday, I start with my group A. All these other students are not in Words Their Way yet. So they might be engaged in some other independent activities. And now Tuesday comes, Group A is now doing a teacher lesson with me. And on day 1, my Group B has started. So they're highlighting and cutting and putting their book or their word sorts into their Ziploc bags. And again, now we're a Wednesday. Group A is on day 3. Group B is on day 2. Group C is on day 1. So slowly we're cycling until Friday hits and every single one of my students is now engaged in one of the days of the Words Their Way cycle. So you may remember that day 1, the teacher needs to be reading those words with the students and making sure they understand it. But also day 2, the teacher is doing their teacher lesson. So be flexible and being able to have that time to read those words with those kiddos. I always say day 2, your teacher lesson is the most important, and you can always find time throughout the day to do the other sections. As well, day 6, when they're doing their assessment checklist, don't worry about if it has to be done exactly at that time. You can always find other time because you are supposed to be in many places at a time. But remember, day 2, your teacher lesson is the most important. Now, when I like to do Words Their Way, I did like to do it right after lunch recess. It should only take about 10 to 15 minutes when your students really understand the routines and expectations. And so this was a great way to get them in. They knew exactly what to do. They grabbed their word sorts and off we went. We would have something like this on our loft board so that students knew exactly which day they were on and where to go. So you would just plunk in your kiddos' names, right? Again, you might not have group 1, maybe they're called unicorns or whatever your students have come up with, but they know, oh, I'm in group 4, oh, I'm on buddy sort, and they would get going. Special thanks to one of our teachers in our district who created something like this. I really like the visual piece. And again, that highlight, they know exactly what they need to do in case they're not able to read. We also have those visuals. So we have almost completed our whole cycle. We have created our spelling inventories and marked them. We have grouped our students. We've got planned instruction, so looking at those sequencing guides. We then have started that Words Their Way cycle. Now the big piece, monitoring their growth. So individually, you're doing that on day 6. When you're looking for those check-ins, 8 out of 10, are they really understanding the spelling patterns that are being taught? Remember, it's flexible groupings. If you're noticing gaps, maybe you need to revisit, or maybe you need to change up your groupings. Do what you need to do to best support your students. The inventory check-in, so that spelling inventory that you did to start this off, which would be in September, then I recommend doing it again in January and then June. This is a great reporting tool right before progress reports for both communication with parents as well on that progress report. Again, this is a great time to monitor that progress. See how your students are developing. Are you noticing some students are really understanding, and are there some students that are struggling? And remember all the time that it's okay to change up your groupings. And these are a great time as well to change up those groupings when you redo those inventories. Thank you so much for joining me on this how-to video for Words Their Way. I hope that you found this useful. If you have any questions about their Words Their Way, please feel free to email me at kimberly.goosen@cssd.ab.ca or at newcurriculum@cssd.ab.ca. As well, Christine Knight, our ELA consultant, is happy to answer any questions as well. I hope to continue to give you some professional growth opportunities, and I hope to see you there. Thank you so much.